Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Holy Happy Hour. I'm your host, Josh. And first of all, I wanted to thank the sponsors, Sacrilegious, for sponsoring the channel. You guys can use promo code HAPPY when you check out. It's such a great Catholic organization that tries to spur up holy conversations with joyful products. So I wanted to remind you to check out the Talking with Tara videos that she will be putting out because it's December and we are getting into Advent and she is officially starting her stuff. So we're going to jump into today's episode, and we got today local Tulsa boy, right? You grew up in the Tulsa area, right?
Sure did. Broken
Yeah,
Arrow.
awesome. Well, and I see it says Gomer. This is Mike Gormley from Broken Arrow. And the podcast you have is called Every Knee Shall Bow, right? I was have to
Yes.
double check. Awesome,
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah. Not bend, bow. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if you ever have any email. I can't find your podcast. Like, where is it? But yeah, I was looking. I found it, and I was like, that's great. And the link is in the description below, so you guys can find that there. I have to first start with that. Like, where's the nickname Gomer come from? Is it just something from your last name, or
So I went to Bishop Kelly Catholic High School, right?
yeah?
And in ninth grade, great group of friends there. And one of my buddies always called me Gormley, my last name. What's up, Gormley? Oh. And incredible guy, Josh.
Yeah.
And then started homeschooling in 10th grade
Hmm.
because I was in love with a girl who was a homeschooler. I never even heard of that until I met her. And then I tried to woo her by homeschooling. So that's stupid, but it didn't work, by the way. And so my buddies, they would call me during study hall,
Hmm.
and I would be waking up at like 11 when they would call me.
Yeah.
And they had, right before study hall, they had Hebrew scriptures, Bible 1.
Uh-huh.
And they would call me, and that's where they discovered that the prostitute wife of the prophet Hosea is named Gomer. And they thought it would be funny to nickname me Gomer. And then when I went to Franciscan, the year that I was a freshman, everyone, it was like every other male was a Michael. So I'd be like,
Yeah.
my friends call me, or my name's Michael, but my friends call me Gomer. And no one ever remembered Michael. Everyone remembered
Yeah.
Gomer.
Oh,
And
that's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I imagine that being like they're gonna think this is like funny to call me Gomer. I'm just gonna lean into it. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna call myself that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, maybe I thought I would start with just a little bit about you and kind of growing up and what you're doing now. Just for anyone that's listening, that maybe is like, I don't know who this Gomer guy is. Like, tell me a little more. Yeah, just a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a very strong Catholic house. My parents are both from Philadelphia, so they are very loud. Everything you think of when you think of a Philadelphia Eagles fan, imagine that in very pious, holy people, but the same amount of rage. That's my parents. They're awesome. I love
Yeah.
them. We only have 2 volumes in our house, Loud and Louder. I'm the baby of the family, so I'm from the womb. I'm a narcissist, and I desperately need all the attention. So it was really great for that, for my future career. So
Yeah.
what I do basically, I have a lot of things that are really significant in my life, kind of looking back, but one of them
Hmm.
was Life Team.
Hmm.
And I went to a Life Team parish, and it really changed it changed my mindset because it went from a position of catechesis, like let's
Hmm.
teach the faith they already have, to a place of evangelization. There was an
Yeah.
assumption that these kids don't have faith, so let's evangelize them.
Hmm.
And if they
Yeah.
do, it only strengthens their faith. And if they don't, then they can make an act of faith.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes to how the church was dying everywhere. In my home, it was vibrant. We prayed the rosary. My dad's in the Knights of Columbus. My mom was a director of religious education at our Franciscan parish. The Franciscan priests that founded it were like superheroes in the faith.
Hmm.
They knew Maximilian Kolbe. They were Polish Franciscans.
Wow.
They were in a Nazi concentration camp. They suffered for the faith. They were tortured by the Nazis.
Hmm.
And they came to the Oklahoma because Oklahoma soldiers liberated them. So they begged their way up to Kiefer, Oklahoma, and then made it to Broken Arrow and built this
Wow.
church. And then the Ku Klux Klan used to burn crosses in front of it. By the time I came along, 20 years later, the Ku Klux Klan had disappeared, but it was just replaced by Main Street Baptist Church there in Broken Arrow, where you used to have a sign as I'm driving there. I went to public school for 5 years. All my public school teachers and the principal, for the most part, went to Main Street Baptist. And there was a big sign, 7-week series on Catholicism, the cult of Catholicism, or the whore of Babylon. I was told that all the time growing up. So
Yeah.
very buckle the Bible belt kind of feel to it.
Hmm.
And and that caused me to want to learn and know and study my faith a lot. My parents got into apologetics when Scott Hahn had his conversion, and my
Yeah.
dad's job moved him to California, where he got connected with St. Joseph's Communications in West Covina. And I
Hmm.
started listening to Scott Hahn tapes as a seventh grader, sixth grader, and stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I'm like that kind of nerd, right? So
Hmm.
I started reading Peter Kraft and philosophy when I was in ninth grade,
Hmm.
and all this, and it was deeply meaningful for me,
Yeah.
my whole life. Even when I was like deeply questioning whether or not I wanted to be Catholic,
Hmm.
there was this element of like, it just makes sense though, and I had
Hmm.
to, it was like my youthful angst rebelling against that.
Yeah.
So I have an intellectual conversion in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, and a heart conversion. But I have spent my years, I went to Franciscan University, double majored in philosophy and theology.
Hmm.
I'm married. I have 4 kids. I met my wife at Franciscan. She was a grad student. I was an undergrad, so she's much, much, much older than me. So old. But and yeah, we just celebrated 15 years of marriage.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and I did parish work for 17 years, full time parish work,
Okay.
youth ministry and adult faith formation, and then I just clicked over to do full time. I am the mission evangelist for Paradisus Day,
Hmm.
which is the organization that runs That Man Is You.
Yep.
We're in about 1,000 parishes for that. We just launched She Shall Be Called Woman. We're in about
Yeah.
300 parishes for that.
Hmm.
Missionaries to the Family, Mysteries of the Holy Rosary. Like, there are incredible stuff
Yeah.
that we're doing. And I'm the guy that's like on the road giving talks and men's retreats and stuff.
Yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
yeah. And on the side, I have 3 podcasts. So the one that you talked about, Every Knee
Hmm.
Shall Bow, that's with Ascension Press. And then I
Yeah.
have Catching Foxes, which is the oldest.
Hmm.
I think we're coming up on 9 years this April.
Oh wow.
So about 6 months, yeah, we'll hit 9 years, 10, 11 million downloads. So that's been fun
Yeah.
doing that. And then Every Knee Shall Bow is a weekly Catholic podcast on
Hmm.
evangelization and discipleship. And then I have a new one that I just started called Becoming God
Okay.
with Christopher Karstens.
Yeah.
Chris is the head of he's the publisher of the Adoramus Bulletin.
Hmm.
Used to be a part of a podcast called The Liturgy Guys. And
Yeah.
so basically what we do is we look at the liturgy through the lens of the doctrine of theosis.
Okay.
And I bring to it the kind of like gospel centered preaching, teaching of the gospel.
Hmm.
And so it's been a lot of fun. So yes,
Yeah.
I do all this stuff, and I'm a roofer. I do sales for a roofing and solar company.
Okay. Like anything
So
and everything, I just do it all.
basically, I'm a
Yeah.
tent maker like St. Paul. Come on.
That's awesome. Well, we'll definitely get all those links for you, like all those podcasts, and mention them in the description so you guys can
Nice.
check those out for sure. What got you into podcasting? Is that, I mean, I assume maybe with you researching books and then podcasts come around and you're like, oh, these are awesome, and you start listening and then just decide one day you yourself wanted to get into it.
So I was a part of the podcasting movement from
Yeah.
almost day one. In 2006, I was a huge Apple fanboy,
Uh huh.
technology groupie guy. So there was a guy named Leo Laporte who built a network.
Hmm.
His famous show was called Last Week in Tech and MacBreak
Hmm.
Weekly. And I used to listen to probably 20 podcasts, hour to 2 hour long podcasts a week. Um, then publishers started getting into it with, like their books, and be like a conversation with the author and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then radio shows used to publish their episodes as podcasts. And before there was any money in it, like, I fell in love with the platform from the
Hmm.
beginning. And me and my buddy, who always used to listen to him, we would talk about starting our own podcast all the time. And then one day we finally were like, nah, we should do this, let's do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, we took the plunge, and yeah, never looked back.
Yeah. That's awesome. I remember telling people, because I truly, like, my in my story, I felt called to like start one, and I had this weird feeling of like the internet is just full of sin and full of opportunities to sin, and I just feel like it's a mission field. And I had a conversation with someone who focused missionary, and rightfully so, encouraged students like get off the internet, like don't be on the internet, but actually had a belief that we should abandon the internet. And I was really curious about that. Like, I think we need to go to where there are those in need, and obviously have all sorts of people that would disagree with that. But also had this interesting kind of conundrum of, well, I want to make sure though I'm not trying to be the next Matt Fradd and do this for my own glory. Like I'm going to speak a Sikh one day, everyone's going to know my name and be a Catholic household name. So I kind of had this like battle. But do you kind of like think that this is first of all, I guess like a mission field, but then also that people would be called to serve there?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was doing Catching Foxes, the purpose of Catching Foxes was like, it's a Catholic show because we are Catholics and it bleeds into
Hmm.
all of every aspect of our lives, but it wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be like an explicitly Catholic show. So
Uh-huh.
we had a guy on the show that we called Joey Jojo Shabadoo because he had to remain anonymous.
Uh-huh.
And that's a Simpsons joke. And he same sex attraction, numerous like random hookups, like the worst of the worst that you hear about sex addiction. I mean, the guy was like super risky behavior, right?
Hmm.
And talking about his struggles with it and how he's reconciling it with the theology of the body and
Hmm.
confession and all this stuff. And it was a fascinating interview. And I got an email after we did that, and it was from a mother who said, I'm a mother of 5, lifelong Catholic, super devout. I go to all the Bible studies, I do all the things, and secretly I'm a sex addict. My husband knows. I'm in intensive therapy, she said, but I am so suicidal because I know what it means to be a good Catholic, but I don't know how to control this addiction. And so I just hate myself. And for the first time in my life, I believe that God's grace is real and there's hope for me because I stumbled on this episode.
Yeah.
And
That's
yeah, I mean, it was an episode we didn't even know what we were doing. And
yeah.
the reality is, their podcasts are a medium that can sneak up on anyone. They're searching for
Hmm.
something, they're looking for something, a Google search, a YouTube search, all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're landing on your doorstep, and your digital doorway is open 24/7, right?
Hmm.
And maybe there is some truth that can be spoken into their hearts that the Lord can put, it's accessible to them.
Yeah.
It's accessible to them. I mean, I don't know how many conversions Gideons have had by putting Bibles for free in hotel room nightstands. I have no idea. But
Yeah.
I do know it's not zero. And they're
Yeah.
willing to pay that price in order to have a chanced encounter with the sacred scriptures.
Hmm.
Why not do the same thing with podcasts? And
Yeah.
yeah, podcasts are so great because they can be so niche, right? Like
Yeah.
you can make a podcast on Catholicism and Game of Thrones, right? Like you
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
it on
Hmm.
anything. And
Yeah.
people who are searching for that niche can all of a
Hmm.
sudden find you and
Yeah.
find your voice and find the gospel and find the Lord. So
Hmm.
I think it is dumb to run and hide from the internet unless you are super struggling every time you log on. Then
Yeah.
for your own soul you need to, but it's dumb not to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it with a lot of things because you could have something similar of like going to like they used to do church lock-ins at the church I went to all the time, and if going to a church lock-in and being somewhere all night with like girlfriends and guy friends is going to cause you sin, maybe you shouldn't go to church lock-ins. It doesn't mean church lock-ins are necessarily bad, but yeah, I felt this quiet, and I talked to my priest about it, and we had talked about this process of you're going to have to constantly be purifying your intentions because you probably will come by like you had a video go viral or something, there may be some pride try to sneak in there or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, our mission here is to have conversations with as many great Catholics as we can, and actually we're kind of the same way. I've had some people on here that aren't Catholic. It's not necessarily only Catholics can be on the show, but the chance though that we could possibly plant a seed out there somewhere, and I know it's cool seeing the analytics where it's like you have people in Canada or South America,
Yep.
Africa listening, and you just never know that you may plant a seed in someone that they're like, maybe that Catholic, I don't know, that sounds interesting. Then they seek out
Yeah.
more information about the Catholic faith from a priest. They become Catholic. Something you may never ever know about, and so we pray about that all the time. It's like help us to plant as many seeds as we can, and especially to hopefully this podcast succeed in evangelizing someone, even if and even more especially if we don't even know about it,
Yeah.
because I think that the internet is can be such a tool for evil, but it can be a tool for goodness as well. um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And on a note on that pride, I am so prideful and arrogant, and I think every word that comes out of my mouth ought to be published and archived and disseminated to the masses. So it is a
Uh-huh.
struggle, honestly. I remember
Mm,
one time, this guy was on Pints with Aquinas, and I was helping to bring him into the church.
mhm.
And every time they would they were about to bring up my name, I'd be like, here it comes. They would get like something would happen and they wouldn't mention it. And I'm like, son of a gun. And then one time they mentioned it, but some kids they were filming outside had distracted them. And I was like, oh, they were just about to talk about me. And I remember like I was so upset and I ended up going to confession. And I'm like, Father, I have such vanity and pride. And I like half described the circumstance. And he goes, well, the first step to overcoming pride is the ability to even see that it exists. So you're on the way. And I was like, okay.
That's awesome. So I just keep reminding, just keep saying it out loud, reminding myself. Yeah. Because I'll have stuff where, it could maybe like asking people like, hey, we need this many guys to do a talk at this retreat. And then they're like, just mark down on the form if you're willing to do it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And then it's like, all right, here's who we picked to do talks. This person. Here, my name's got to be on that list. And it's like, and this person. I'm like, what the heck? Like that. It's like, dang it. Okay, it got me. And then it's straight to that next time in confession. It's like, yeah, Father, it happened again. And he's like, yeah, I know. Okay, I know. So yeah, awesome. Well, this one, I know we're recording earlier, but it's coming out during the Advent season. And so I thought maybe I would let you share. Do you guys do anything special for Advent or anything?
So I belong to the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. Are you familiar with that at all?
No, I'm not.
Yeah. So under JP2, there were so many Anglicans that were leaving the Anglican Church for Catholicism that he allowed for the use of the Anglican Book of Common Prayer in measured doses in the liturgy, as long as it was in conformity with Catholic theology.
Yeah.
And then under Benedict, it was widened and broadened what they could use. And then they began crafting their own rites for funerals and weddings and things like that, and baptism that drew in the English patrimony. And then under Benedict and Francis, eventually they would have their own ordinaries, so bishops. The one in the UK is a priest who's married, so he can't be a bishop, so that's why it's called an ordinariate. But the one here in the US, he is not married, or Bishop Slopes, but it's a Bishop Lopes. I said slopes. That's so funny. It's a roofing term. No, but the ordinariate is fascinating because you adhere to it personally, not geographically. So it's not like the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, which I technically am within, but I'm under Our Lady of Walsingham, and I belong to his cathedral personally. Right.
Okay.
So it adds a different thing. But as an Irishman and a Scot, it's been weird trying to convert to this English church patrimony. But there are so many English saints and English traditions that I feel like, because of literally the Revolutionary War and afterwards, that Americans tried to distinguish themselves from the British stuff. But the Catholic side of things from before the Reformation, and then the Anglicans acting as a via media, the middle ground between Lutherans and Catholics, or Protestants and Catholics. There is such a rich patrimony there. So for Advent, we're really big on the antiphons. We're really big on doing Vespers as a community. We call it evensong, where you sing evening prayer, and it takes as long as Mass does. And we're really big on these type of events. And then I would say 3/4 of my church goes to midnight Mass. And we do lessons and carols, if people have heard of that. Lessons and carols. The word for readings is lessons in the English church. So so at the end of when people, when they're in Mass and they end the reading, they say, "Here endeth the lesson," right? So it's so funny to hear that. But that was like a weird adjustment. But like my kids were in the choir, and having my parents up to hear these choirs sing Latin and English hymns and carols and all this stuff. It's not like they're not singing like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? They're singing these beautiful choral pieces, and it just melts your heart. And so having these kind of traditions, there's a lot of other stuff that I'm missing, but that's we're very, and as a family, we build up throughout Advent with penances. And we do every penance, every good deed done is a piece of straw that goes in a manger and all this stuff. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, that's what we're kind of planning our time. So we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So we're kind of in that still early stages of like, what kind of traditions could we start doing together?
Right.
So we we kind of treat Advent as well, like Lent, where we try to get rid of some of the things that aren't gonna put our minds onto Jesus and add more things that will. So we're hoping to add a few more family prayer times and start getting used to, like, if we're doing the rosary together as a family, getting used to like the 4 and 2-year-old climbing all over us and not paying
Yeah.
attention at all. But in those early years, or I don't know, how old are your kids?
Youngest is 9, oldest is 14.
Okay, gotcha. So, do you have any advice for those families? I know we have a lot to listen to the show that have those younger kids want to add some of these things, but it's like, man, my kids are crazy though. Like, how am I supposed
Yeah.
to? How am
Yeah.
I
My
supposed to
kids are
get this?
crazy.
Hmm.
2 of my kids have ADHD because of me. You're welcome, America. Can't wait till they're drivers. But
Uh-huh.
the uh the reality is kids are going to be kids, so you can't get
Hmm.
mad that they have the wiggles because it's God's fault that they do. That's number one. Number two,
Hmm.
repetition builds discipline. There's no
Hmm.
way around it. If you're going to pray the rosary every night, and then
Yeah.
by the 10th or 20th time you do it, they'll be able to do it. Number three, I would say, is I kind of take the Matt Fradd approach, which is like, this is what we're doing. And when they're at that age, would you say 2 and 4 years old? Is that what you said?
Yeah, mine are 2 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah, like they're going to be psychotic. We love
Yeah. Yeah.
the choose life rosaries because my little
Yeah.
little
Hmm.
babies are shoving in their mouth anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But our goal was like, you will know the prayers of the rosary even if we don't say all the Hail Marys.
Hmm.
And so with my little kids, I make sure that they can pray one Our Father, one Hail Mary, one Glory Be really, really well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they'll hear us say the Apostles' Creed and all this stuff, so that by the
Hmm.
time they're 5 and 6, they're praying the full rosary without batting an eye. It's not an end of the world thing. And
Yeah.
the reality is, your kids are going to get bored by the rosary. It's
Hmm.
meant to slow you down, and
Yeah.
kids don't want to be slowed down. So it's a great thing to pray at the end of the day
Yeah.
when they're going to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. I had this random thought too. We have a bunch of like pillows and stuff all over the house, and I was like the other day thinking, is like maybe if we like gave them something to do, they could get their energy out. It's like every time we say Hail Mary, we give them a pillow and they run it to the other side of the room and throw it on the pile, and they're moving this pile from here,
Yeah,
10 pillows from here to here, and then they got to move them back. And yeah, we're trying to figure out any way we can kind of get them involved, but yeah, at the same time, understanding they're two and
yeah.
four, and if they're all of a sudden in a different room, it's like just keep going, and show up. That's the most important thing. It's just to show
Yeah,
up.
movement is 90% of getting them under control, is giving them something to do. We used to have these little they're not cotton balls, they're something like cotton balls. They were
Hmm.
like these knitted crocheted things
Yeah,
where
yeah,
that represented a Hail Mary, and they would put that, but then they just became weapons. And
yeah, yeah. Just to throw them at each other, fighting over them. It's like
yeah,
ah. Well, cool. And then another thing I'm trying to challenge myself on is uh well, first of all, just trying to be more aware of is just like opportunities that God is putting in front of me to evangelize, to like be able to bring up my faith or to share my faith or whatever. And like just recently, I was on a job helping my brother's got a little power washing business, and I was just
nice.
talking to the guy, and he's like, "Oh wait, what did you say? Did you say you're Catholic?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he was just like, "Okay, I have some questions." And he was think he kind of said he most identifies Presbyterian, but at least some other stuff too. We got on this long conversation about like predestination, and it was really interesting. And it was one of those things. I think in the past I would have been nervous to get in that conversation. A, maybe not feeling educated enough, but also I feel like maybe I was feeling in the past like I don't know what to do or how to convert this person to become Catholic. And then I started realizing it's like, hey, it's not going to happen in one sitting. And if it does, like that person's further along than you think. But also,
Yeah,
I had this conversation and it didn't get heated. It was super respectful. He understood. We kind of just got to this point of agree to disagree. Saying all this stuff just to ask. We have some people that are great Catholics, but maybe not answering that call to evangelization as much as maybe they should. And I guess it's not our like my spot to say if they are or not. Because I know we should focus on our own personal faith life. We should focus on our family. But there's this element of also going out, right? Like there's also going to be this
yeah,
responsibility outside of the family to evangelize.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about this. When you were talking with your Presbyterian friend, and when you have these conversations, we always come away with like, oh, I wish I would have said this, or oh, there's
Hmm.
some stuff that I can send him, or if you only listen to when a Protestant minister becomes Catholic by Scott Hahn, or
Mhm.
like there's things that bob around in our heads. That is apathy being overcome, right?
Mhm.
And there's nothing that overcomes apathy more than putting yourself out there and risking looking like a fool,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah.
actually having the conversation, maybe for the first time, not knowing how it's going to go, but also saying like, no, in all things, I'm going to be charitable. Even if
Mhm.
I lose the argument, I'm not, because I'm not good at arguing, or I'm not good at discussing without losing my temper. So I'll deliberately back away from certain things. What
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can do is, if you're approaching things charitably, what you are doing is, number one, overcoming the calcification in Catholic hearts, who
Mhm.
thinks, well, if I'm just a good enough example, they'll follow. And it's like, nah, it's not how this
Mhm.
works, man.
Yeah.
You can be a great example, but if you don't have words, you ain't doing anything.
Yeah.
And people, like, when they hear the words attached to the actions, then they only find those words to be truthful. But when they just see actions, I mean, they could be like, oh, he has a nice temperament, he's a sweet guy, he's a nice guy.
Mhm.
It's not, oh, he's radically giving his life up for the sake of Jesus Christ and him crucified. Like that
Yeah.
takes a move, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I always tell Catholics, like, invest in people and invite them, right?
Yeah,
Invest in
yeah.
people and invite them. So as a family, or as an individual, especially if you like are in the workforce and you go somewhere, say you go once or twice a week out to eat somewhere for lunch,
Mhm.
go to the same places. Go to pick 3 places that you like, go to those 3 and only those 3, and do that
Mhm.
for a year, and tip well, and be nice and kind and courteous, and pay attention to
Mhm.
people. And when you see people recurring, go up to them and, talk to them. And those are the people that you're earning a right to be heard in their lives.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who's like, hey, why do we always go to Crust Pizza? And I go, well, one, it's the best pizza. And number two, and I told them, I was like, this is how I evangelize. I show up,
Mhm.
I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm attentive,
Yeah.
and I want them to know that I'm here for them. And that day, this is not an exaggeration. So this person asked me, we've probably been there like maybe 5 or 6 times together.
Mhm.
And she turns around and this guy goes, hey, are you from church? And she says it to my friend. And she's
Mhm.
this gorgeous blonde who, stands out in a crowd.
Mhm.
I do not. I kind of look like the cave troll in Lord of the Rings, the one that stabs Frodo through the mithril. And she goes, yeah, I go to St. Anthony's. He's like, I've seen you before. My wife wants to become Catholic. She's not baptized.
Oh,
And she
wow.
goes, well, that guy right there is in charge of adult baptism. And then he turns and looks at me. He goes, I've seen you. What's your name? Mike something? I was like, yeah. And then we get back after finishing at Crust, and within 20 minutes, he went home, got his wife and kid, and came to
Mhm.
the church office. Like, and I'll
Yeah.
never forget that. And that's the thing, is like, people think evangelization is St. Paul going to the marketplace, going to
Mhm.
going to Athens, and oh, men of Athens, I see you're very religious, and
Mhm.
doing all this stuff. And it's like, yes, that is it. That
Yeah.
is evangelization too.
Mhm.
But there are 1,000 other ways that we evangelize. But it starts with pouring yourself out into other people. It starts with
Yeah.
investing in other people.
Mhm.
And from that investment, then you can invite them into a relationship with Christ.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, because I feel like we get so comfortable. Like I go to Christ the King here in Tulsa, and it's such a
The
great.
Minecraft church, as
Yeah.
I call it. It looks like it was a
It
church
does.
built in
I
Minecraft.
could definitely see that. And we have this great community. It's you could go there and you could put your
Yep.
kids through Marquette. You could go to like Bishop Kelly High School, like you did. You went. You could be a part of Bible studies there, and That Man Is You. We have a huge That Man Is You group.
You
You
do.
can do everything there. And then your only time that you would be outside of that, because your kids' sports could go through there, your the all the birthday parties are going to be at the families there, but the only time you're going to be outside of that is at work, and that's a great place to. I mean, that's one place you're definitely going every single day that you're going to see people consistently, and they can see your actions, and maybe those conversations can start. Um, but I feel like a lot of the times we get comfortable in these bubbles that we're inside of like our community, and I was having a good conversation with one of the folks missionaries at our parish about how he's felt really called lately to start doing like neighborhood little block parties at his house and inviting his neighbors and just talking about like I think that sometimes we can get too comfortable in our circle and we're living outside. I mean, we've even had people talking about like living on like a compound, like in out in outskirts of Tulsa and land together and everything. It's like Actually, I'm not sure that's a great idea. I think we need to be living in the city within, like, with people, because evangelization definitely wouldn't happen very much if we lived out there and kind of put ourselves away from all of it. Uh,
Yeah, I'm always of two minds when it comes to this because I think we dramatically lack community in the modern age.
mhm.
One of my
Yeah.
favorite books is Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, and he wrote it in the 1830s, I think 1836. And it was like,
Mhm.
why does France not, why can France not keep a republic? And the
Mhm.
Americans have been able to. And he has a lot of answers, but one of them was America was kind of born for the democratic age.
Mhm.
And he describes a democratic age as creating a new type of man, which he said is Homo solus, the lonely man.
Mhm.
And so I think Christian community is itself evangelizing.
Mhm.
Like everyone knows the Amish, even though we use them as an extreme example, but everyone knows it and they know what they stand for and they know who they are.
Mhm.
And I think forming strong community as more divisive as our country becomes and all of these
Mhm.
things, every 4 years we feel it, every midterm election we feel it.
Yeah.
But it's more than just like Republican and Democrat, conservative and liberal, progressive, woke, like all those labels. There is a deep seated anti-theistic bias that's since the new atheist movement, but even before that's ripping through. And I think there's it wouldn't surprise me if there's a new wave of anti-clericalism that comes through, like we saw at the
Mhm.
French Revolution times. And I say this
Mhm.
because I'm someone who hates the idea of being in a little bubble with my friends and never meeting new people and just having my set safe thing.
Yeah.
We all love that to a certain point because it's secure.
Yeah.
But in another thing, like Christ made us for virtuous friendships, and you can't have that with strangers. So there
Mhm.
has to be this balance between this community of brethren, right,
Mhm.
that we
Yeah.
form, and this missionary pose. And so my church, a very small church,
Mhm.
and I every time they let me give a talk to the adult faith formation or representing the adult faith formation people, I always say like it is good that we have this community and we're the type of community like we're almost like a traditional Latin mass community because we're super tight, super small, everyone knows everyone, all this stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, but here's the deal, we're like 2 steps away from becoming a cult. And
Mhm.
we're definitely going to become a cult if we become so insular we don't care about anyone else.
Yeah.
But our goal is to do what Cardinal Ratzinger, he called one of his books The Open Circle. I think
Mhm.
in English it's called The Communion. But the
Mhm.
idea of the open circle was there's this bond of brotherhood that is the circle, the Philadelphia love.
Mhm.
And that's only for other baptized faithful Christians.
Mhm.
But from that circle is meant to be open with agape love towards the world.
Yeah.
And I love that image of like from community, we go out and minister, and we minister by bringing them into the community. But the
Mhm.
dangerous thing is once we have community, it's warm and safe. And so
Yeah.
we bunker. And
Yeah.
you're right. The bunker mentality is the worst mentality we can have. Because
Mhm.
what you're going to say is in the bunker mentality, it's okay if you're lost. I'm with the saved people. And then it becomes us versus them. And
Yeah.
then it becomes heresy hunting, and you're not as pure as us. And then pretty soon you're like a weird sex cult.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
someone's making money and then you get raided by the FBI. Like
Yeah.
that is the tale as old as time. Tale as
Yeah.
old as time.
Yeah. We gotta warn Christ the King, warn Father Elkin. We don't want that to happen. But yeah, and that's kind of how I felt, and by going out and like doing that kind of stuff, I saw I come across them, I feel like all the time on social media when I'm doom scrolling. Is these like street preachers that like take it in my opinion, I guess I'll get your opinion on this, but I feel like they take it to the opposite extreme. It's like I'm gonna
Yep.
go out there and I'm gonna, and some of them do it civilly, but like some of it's just like I don't know how much good you're doing. I don't know how much
Yeah.
help you're doing. I'm thinking of like a really strongly worded
Yeah.
passionate street preacher that goes and set up at the Pride Parade, and it's like all for the most part. I mean, there could be some big conversion. Someone comes and has a conversation. There's a big conversion. There probably is that those stories, but for the most part, a lot of all they're doing is inciting all this anger in people, and maybe making that even more. They're building up a brick wall even more,
Right.
like making more of a divide. I don't know your opinion on that as like street preachers, and I don't
I don't
know.
mind street preaching as long as you're getting to know individuals, not just screaming at a crowd. Screaming
Yeah.
at a crowd is almost always, I won't say always, but almost always just a sheer ego trip.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I don't want an ego trip being the source of the gospel.
Yeah.
So and people can very easily dismiss you as that crazy guy screaming in the corner, you know. So
Yeah.
I would much rather, if you're a street preacher and you're preaching from a corner, let's say you got a microphone and a speaker, and someone comes up to you, you put that crap away and you talk to the individual. I
Yeah.
used to do sidewalk counseling at an abortion clinic.
Hmm.
It was so hard for me to do that because I broke down crying every time I saw a woman walk into the clinic.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was to let the pro-choice escorts, who are the meanest, nastiest people you've ever met in your life, to let
Hmm.
them know, and the women know, and any men that accompanied the women,
Hmm.
to know that we were there for them, that we loved them, and that we were here to listen. And
Hmm.
some of the pro-choice escorts are now committed pro-life Roman Catholics.
Nice.
Some of them hate Catholicism a
Hmm.
thousandfold, even more now.
Yeah.
And you can't change that, right? You
Yeah.
can't dictate other people's responses, but what you can do is try to understand the difference between just screaming at people. Like,
Hmm.
no one, how do you put this, like I'm a fat guy. I don't want a stranger coming up to me being like, hey buddy, you need to lose a lot of weight, that's not healthy.
Mm.
I'll just be like, shut your mouth, right?
Yeah.
But if
Who
I have
are
a friend
you?
being like, hey, you
Yeah.
want to come to the gym with me? You
Uh,
know, which my
yeah.
friend does all the time because I'm a fat guy who desperately needs to lose weight. But
Hmm.
that notion, it's fundamentally a different thing. I'm actually appreciative of my
Hmm.
friend saying that because I know it comes from a place of love, and I'm furious at the person who's a stranger. You know, that person you just want to punch in the mouth. And the
Yeah.
same is true about the church, like religion, faith, Christ, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
When
Hmm.
you're shoving it down someone's throat, it's more about you than it is about them.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think of all the people that they turn to Christ, how many hundreds do they turn away?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
Absolutely.
sad.
Yeah, and we see an example of it in politics because that's all politics are nowadays is mostly uneducated people just yelling at each other, and there are educated people on both sides of that that they just truly believe in conservative or liberal like views. But I feel like the loudest people are those that are just like I'm liberal because I was grown up this way, or I'm conservative because I'm grown up this way, and then they're just like yelling at each other or
Yep.
making fun of each other back and forth, and it's just like we are a country divided, and we always will be because I'm not sure there is any solving this problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I feel like that's the biggest thing for not only Catholics, just Christians in general. That we need to make sure that we don't do that. We don't start causing that to where it is just this either shaming. I guess for it, as it wouldn't be as much making fun of, but it'd be more of like a shaming, or I mean,
Yeah.
telling people they're going to hell for what they're doing or what they believe and all this kind of stuff. In a derogatory sense, I guess. But yeah, I just that was one of my things is I was thinking of when thinking of like talking about this call to being missionary disciples and like how the way we are called to do it is do it as Jesus did, would walked and built relationships, and he walked with his disciples, then taught them how to walk with other people in this little way
Yeah.
of evangelization. And I love like I do a lot with Focus here on campus at TU, but also at my parish, and I love their win, build, send. I mean, it's not their model, but it's Jesus' model. But their model, their quotes they use because it's just such a great
Yeah.
showing, and then it also puts it into a great perspective where it's like, okay, I need to be a missionary disciple. It's like that's not saying like you need to live up to the standard of Saint Francis Xavier. Like you don't, you might not be like called to go out and like do some crazy wild, like massive dazzling deed. I guess as Jose Maria Escriva says, but those little holy moments is like investing in people and
Yeah.
building those relationships is what we are all called to do.
Yeah.
So
Inviting people into your home.
yeah.
You know, I want to take you brought it into politics.
Hmm.
There's a philosopher named Alistair McIntyre that I'm a big fan of. He's out of Notre Dame. And he talks about in his book After Virtue, he basically says, like, why has moral discussion become so shrill? And by
Hmm.
shrill, he means that screaming till you're hoarse at each other kind of differences.
Yeah.
And he says, because everyone thinks the other side, this is my paraphrase, of course,
Yeah.
uh, everyone thinks the other side are a bunch of idiots, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
You're all a bunch of idiots. And the reason why we think that is because our moral worldview
Mm.
starts from first principles and logically reasons to these conclusions that are our
Hmm.
beliefs about morality and behavior in the world. What's condemnable, what's acceptable but evil, what's not
Hmm.
acceptable, you know, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And he said, but we all use the same language: just, unjust, rights, good, bad, evil, immoral, all these things. But the thing is that we have different first principles.
Mhm.
And that's the problem is, someone who is a hedonist is starting from different first principles than a Roman Catholic with the natural law theology, than a Kantian with his deontological categorical imperative, than a,
Mhm.
dot, dot, dot. Like you could go down the line of all
Yeah.
the different isms and moral
Mhm.
schemes that we have. They're all starting from first principles and they're all going to their conclusions.
Mhm.
That's why we scream and shout at each other, because we use the same words with different definitions and we're starting from different principles.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, if you're trying to convert a Democrat to be a Republican, if you're trying to take a Biden supporter or a Harris supporter to become a MAGA Trump supporter,
Mhm.
you have to change, not just answer arguments about tax incentives and illegal immigration,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's not it.
Mhm.
It's arguing about first principles. This is why when people who are hardcore pro-choice become pro-life, it's usually because they've had a conversion, because
Mhm.
that's what it is. It's these, like Dr. Bernard Nathanson, he's personally aborted 25,000 babies. Why would he ever leave his moral worldview? Because pretty much anywhere else he's going to go is going to condemn him.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It condemned him. And so that's why he's a Roman Catholic, because he hopes in the cross of Jesus Christ can save him from all the blood that he spilled.
Yeah.
And you hear that and you're like, yeah, because going from one set of first principles to another is conversion. It
Mhm.
might be morally and philosophically, but that's still just such a huge thing. So now take
Yeah.
it as religiously. The single most important question of your life: is God real? Who is God? What is God? How do you
Mhm.
end up with God? Whatever. You're asking people to switch their first principles to come to you,
Yeah.
right? To come to Christ, to come to the Catholic Church, to come to whatever, right?
Mhm.
And for a Baptist to become Catholic is almost as difficult as a stone cold new atheist to become a theist,
Mhm.
let alone a
Yeah.
Christian. And
Yeah.
so I think it's about, part of the shouting at people. I think part of that, it's just like protests. Protests
Mhm.
aren't really for the other side, it's for your side,
Yeah.
right? Like, look at me, look at how loud I can be for us.
Yeah.
And so you realize, like, yeah, it's performative, it's not, and that's dangerous. It's
Yeah.
not actually doing the work of, just a protest isn't doing the work of passing good laws,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And shouting at people on the streets isn't doing the work of evangelization and discipleship.
Yeah.
But it feels like it is. It feels like an
Mhm.
extreme version of that. Like, look how committed to the cause I am.
Yeah.
But when in fact you're only making performance art.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, now in the days of social media, sometimes that's all people want. They just
Yep.
want that viral video to go
Yeah.
famous, make them famous. But yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think we'll wrap this part up. Is there any last advice you'd give to someone that's like, you know what? Yeah, I need to be better, but at evangelizing. But where do I start? I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I got great advice.
Yeah.
Just there's probably a person in your life that you feel like has wandered away from God, maybe a family member,
Hmm.
probably most definitely a family member. And I would encourage you just to have one conversation with them and ask more questions than you give answers.
Hmm.
And we all do this
Yeah.
thing where you ask a question, they give an answer, and you go, "Yeah, well, you know how I look at it? It's like," and it's like,
Hmm.
and now you've dominated the conversation. Just
Yeah.
ask a million questions and shut the heck up, because
Yeah.
most of the time, most people don't know what they believe for themselves. They don't
Yeah.
even know what their own beliefs are. You asking questions can help them clarify that, and when you clarify that for them, then I think the road becomes clear coming home. Even if you clarified that, yeah, I guess I'm not an agnostic, I really am an atheist.
Hmm.
Clarity is important for, and they will thank you for giving them that clarity.
Yeah.
But clarity is important for going on any intellectual journey,
Yeah.
especially to the faith. And then you just pray for miracles.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can affirm that too. I used to own a business where it's like a kind of like a coffee shop, but we did protein shakes and everything. And people would walk in, and obviously, as a business owner, I can't just be super one way or the other because that could affect business. So I was like, well, what can I do? I was like, oh, I can ask questions. So when Roe v. Wade got overturned while I owned that business, and people come in just irate, like they're banning abortions, blah blah all this stuff, and I would just turn around and ask them like if that's what that was. Is that I didn't even look into that? Is that what that is? And or ask them questions of like, well, yeah, what do you think about X or Y? And just the more I was able to get them talking and talk their point out, because a lot of times I haven't even thought it out all the way, but I got them talking about their own point, you almost see them like the realization happening in their face. Like they're like, "Oh, maybe that doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know. And then they eventually, I think, will ask you what you think. So I think it takes a lot of pressure off you too. It's like next time, yeah, like you said, next time you have a friend in your life, next time you meet with them, ask them questions, get into that faith
Yeah.
conversation, and see where it goes. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, we're gonna close the episode like we always do with the famous. I can call it that just because I want to. Saint draft. So how this works, if you guys haven't watched before, it is we're gonna go back and forth drafting, just like the NBA draft. I'm a huge sports guy. Where we draft back and forth our starting five Saints. If they're alive today, they could save the world, and then you viewers get to let us know who you think had the best team in comfort. Or you can. What am I saying? Trying to say you can comment in comfort knowing that there's no wrong answer. It's two teams of Saints, and the winners get absolutely nothing. So we'll go back and forth. The guest gets to go first, so you can just you build your team how you want. You'll pick one. I'll pick one. We'll go back and forth,
Mm.
and just pick the Saint, and then maybe a little why you would have picked that Saint for your team.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm gonna start big. I'm gonna go with Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. I'm going
Oh,
starting with
okay,
good old Saint Bernard.
nice. Now, when you were in Tulsa, is that the parish you grew up in?
No, I did play basketball in its wood floored gym,
Okay,
but no, I did
nice.
not.
Okay,
Yeah.
Saint Bernard. All right. So if I had to go my first, I'd probably pick someone. I tend to go with this person first all the time, but I don't know how you don't. But I would go with a great leader in St. John Paul II.
Hmm.
And yeah, and if they were alive today, I always have people comment sometimes. I pick St. John Paul II, like, oh, yeah, that is a good idea. We should replace Pope Francis. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, we're not replacing people. I would bring back, and if I could pronounce his name, I forget how to say his name before he was Pope, then I would bring that person back. But St. John Paul II.
Carol Wojtyla.
Oh, that sounds so much easier than it like when you're reading it.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay,
Well, there's
Carol.
an L with a line through it.
Yeah,
Ah, run
yeah. Like
away.
what in the world? All right, round two.
Yeah, yeah. So I got my prayerful monk.
There you go.
Let's go with Saint Moses the Black.
Okay.
Right, you got to have a jacked dude who can beat people up. I think that's key.
Yeah. I was about to say I don't know much about him.
Former pirate, went to plunder a monastery, had a conversion, then he protected the monastery from pirates, beat them all up, and made them all monks. So it's a good guy to have.
That's
Saint Moses
awesome.
the Black.
Just imagine like he would just that's what he was doing. He's just like jacked out of his mind. So
Yeah,
which most of
yeah.
those guys probably were because they're just doing manual labor and stuff. Anyway, I have a Saint Joseph tattoo on my arm, but I wanted young Saint Joseph, and I told the tattoo artist who wasn't Catholic, it's like, yeah, he was a carpenter. I mean, he worked with his hands, so I imagine that he would have been actually pretty fit. So then he did up this drawing, and it looks like Saint Joseph was ready to like compete in a bodybuilding competition. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Let's go with it.
What
All
are those
right.
Popeyes forearms? Let's
Yeah, I know,
go.
right? All right. So my second one, I like to have like a faith warrior on the team, great prayerful person, and oh, I don't have my cup anymore. I had my sticker of the parents, but I would go Saint Therese of Lisieux. Be a
Mm.
great, and then also, I mean, we both said we struggled with pride sometimes, and so she'd be a great one too. I think she also struggled with it a little bit, but then I think she was just a great, humble little servant, and it's awesome. And so I try to be more like that. I don't succeed, but I try.
Clever, clever. I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. All right, now I'm going to go a little medieval on you
Okay.
again. We're going with Saint Tommy, good old Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, nice.
Thomas Aquinas was the man of his age.
Mhm.
As he was alive during the great switch from the ancient Greco-Roman shift to the
Mhm.
Franco-Germanic shift. So,
Nice.
his dad was a Lombard, all that stuff. I think he's a man for the ages.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
what did Pope Francis say? Ours is not an age of change, but a change of the ages. So,
Mm.
what better man than Saint Thomas Aquinas to help us
Yeah.
navigate through?
Yeah, he'd be great. We just had, uh oh, man, I blank the Father Gregory Pine on campus
Oh,
recently, and so
nice.
he
He's
quoted
awesome.
a whole lot of St. Thomas Aquinas. It was funny because there's a bunch of TU students, but then also, just community members because that's a big name to bring on campus, so it had a ton of people there. And it was hilarious because if anyone knows TU students, they know they are highly intellectual. So, like, the Catholic students, I worked on the Catholic Student Center on campus, and when I first started working here, these kids are just like, yeah, what are you up to today? And so, oh, we're doing a swimming through the Sumo. We're going through St. Thomas Aquinas, and I'm just like, You guys are so much smarter than it comes to this stuff than I know. So it's hilarious just like hearing the different perspectives. People are like, I
Yeah.
loved it. It was so good. The 2 students loved it. And then the some of the community people were just like, who was that saint he kept quoting? Like that stuff went way over my head. But I'm just like,
Yeah.
that is hilarious. It can do that to you. All right. If I was gonna match kind of that pick and kind of go in that kind of really, really smart, well, I'm thinking like a writer, someone that really just could communicate well. I'd go St. Paul. St. Paul, really just great. Read a whole big chunk of the Bible. That'd just be a great one.
Can't go wrong with
All
Paul.
right, 3 and
All
3.
right, so
Round 4.
yeah, let me think here. I'm gonna go with John Henry Newman.
Okay, it's a great one.
John Henry Newman.
Yeah.
Love me some John Henry, and
Mhm.
famous English convert. Thousands converted when he converted. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. He had a collection of St. Philip Neri's books, and we are the St. Philip Neri University Parish. And so a donor came across them, and he purchased them, and they're in a glass case upstairs here at the parish. So if you're local to Tulsa, want to swing by, you can see the actual books from St. John Henry Newman's collection
Huh, I
that
didn't
are
know
all
that.
St. Philip Neri's books. Yeah, super cool. And with that, I'll take St. Philip Neri. He's great. Patron saint of joy, which I think is just an
Yeah.
awesome name. Super cool. The only other name I like better is Saint Drogo, is the Catholic saint or the patron saint of coffee and ugly people. I just think that's an awesome name. But yeah, Saint Philip Neri, patron saint of joy, and he was a really great example of the little way of evangelization, which is awesome.
Cool.
All right, last
Uh,
pick, number 5.
Last pick. My favorite, St. Catherine of Siena.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Got another Dominican. Zeal for God's house consumed her, and she told the
Mhm.
Pope off and made him do what she wanted. So I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I'm down for that, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we need bold people like that. So
Yeah.
for the last one, I'll cheat a little bit. I took their daughter. It's St. Louis and Zelly Martin. I feel like they're just mentioned together all the time, so I can take them both and kind of get a 2 for 1 there. But if I had to pick one, I'd go St. Zelly Martin. And I love the book that was put together that has their writings in it, the Extraordinary Parents of St. Therese. And maybe my last recommendation as we're closing out this podcast episode, if you want a book to do with your spouse, that's a great book to read together and talk about. It's got their actual letters to each other because they traveled a lot for work and own
That's awesome.
businesses, and it's such a great book. So, well, awesome. You guys let us know in the comments section which team you guys think is better. Now, again, there's no wrong answers, and yeah, Mike, thank you again for being on the show. And do you have any last plugs for yourself before we close out?
If you want to nerd out, I'm starting these apologetics videos. I'm
Yeah,
starting to drop them onto YouTube. Joyfuldefense.com. You can find them all for free. Plus speaking guides to them, or not speaking guides, small group discussion guides. I did it for prison ministry. I don't
oh,
mention
nice.
prison ministry because it's also for RCIA if people want to use them that way.
Yeah,
It's 10 episodes, 10 basic introductions to Catholic apologetics. So
nice.
always tying it to the gospel message of the Paschal mystery, every single one of them. So
Nice.
yeah, check it out, joyfuldefense.com.
Awesome. And I'll have you send me that link as well, and we'll include that in the description. So if you're watching this right now, it's in the description below. Other than that, you guys don't forget to consider being a monthly supporter to continue to help us grow the channel and to do better things. Our goal is to plant seeds across the internet, and we know that the Holy Spirit will do works with them. So let's just keep spreading Jesus across YouTube. And other than that, we will see you guys next week. Have a blessed week.
Adios.